All right, I'm an addict called Gabby. I've been coming to this place for 17 years. This is the first time I've done a workshop because I always not do it. So I guess this is a good time to start. So anyways, it's funny, like applying spiritual principles. When I first got clean, all I wanted to do is not use dope, and I came in here and you guys were talking about spiritual principles and it just went over my head. And I was just like, I don't really care about that. How do you not use drugs, And so I just stuck around for a while, and I heard people throwing out hope, and I heard people throwing out gratitude, and I heard people throwing out all these spiritual principles about honesty and whatever. And I was like, yeah, I don't know how to do that, and I don't know how to not use dope, So I was like really focused on that. And I remember one of the reasons why it was really clear to me after a while is because I didn't know how to be honest. I would lie at any given time just because I didn't know how not to lie. I didn't know how not to be controlling. I didn't know how not to do all these things because this is the way I lived. And so when people started talking about how not to be that way, that really made me kind of freaked out because this is what I do. I don't know how not to. I just don't want to use dope. And so that was really my focus. And so it's funny because in my story, the first spiritual principle that I really got down with was anonymity. Because I got clean relatively young when people weren't getting clean young. And anonymity, I sat around and I could really easily say, okay, I don't belong here, and lots, just like anybody else, and I wanted to explain my way out of the rooms, and someone sat down and talked to me about the spiritual principle of anonymity and how, this is all an equal playing field, and we're faceless addicts, and it doesn't matter how much or how little you used, only what your problem is and how we can help. And I was like, fuck, like I belong, and that really got me to a point where it was just like, okay, I'm going to stick around long enough. Maybe I should learn about these spiritual principles and stop being closed-minded. So that's the next one. Started being open to this thing and started realizing, oh, okay, how self-centered I truly am. So I sat down with my sponsor at the time, and she started rattling off again all these spiritual principles, and I didn't know how to apply them. And she was just like, okay, well, what are you doing then? Let's look at what you're doing, and then maybe we can figure out how not to do that, right? And so we started looking at what I was doing, and all of it was based off of fear. I was so fucking scared of everything that I felt like I had to control, or I had to manipulate, or I had to do whatever to get the outcome that I wanted to. And sometimes it was really most of the time at that time it was really self-centered because I wanted this, but also a lot of times it was that I wanted you to like me. I wanted you to get to understand how I view the world, which is over here, and the reality is over here, and so that's how I control and manipulate people. And so she was just like, but you understand though that if you have faith, that you don't need to do that anymore, that you're worth it. And I was just like, well, I'm not worth it though. I don't get that shit. And she's just like, well, you need some fucking self-acceptance then. I was like, how in the hell do you get self-acceptance? She's like, through the steps. I started working the steps. And through the step working, the self-acceptance IP, it talks about that, and what really again helped me with self-acceptance was that spiritual principle of anonymity and humility. Because anonymity, again, it gets me to a point where I'm the same as you. I'm no different than you. We're equal. We're cool. And then humility, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Not only am I the same as you, but I'm where I'm supposed to be. I can't be here. I can't be there. I'm here. And the only way to grow is to know where I'm at. I can't step forward if I think I'm 5 steps back. There's just no way. And so that really helped me a lot in saying, the only way I could accept myself is just yeah, this is where I'm at, and being able to grow from there. And then after that, and working the 6th and 7th step and really understanding the true depth of self-centeredness, how my actions truly affected people, I started giving a rat's ass, you know? Because a lot of times we're like, oh yeah, I'm going to start being honest and not say, you know, I'm going to do this when I'm actually planning on doing that. And, you know, all that really high level, now I'm talking business, high level honesty and open-mindedness and willingness of I'm just not acting out really bad, you know? But I'm still doing all this other stuff, you know? And I started realizing, okay, maybe I need to start working on like the now. Like, okay, I'm not acting like a using addict anymore, and that's really good. You know, that's the first step. You know, second step, maybe start acting like a recovering person. You know, whoa, what a concept. So I started looking at like how I was truly being self-centered in my life today. And I remember, because I used to smoke, and my first sponsor, she always like, and she told me at the very beginning of our relationship she hated teenagers. And she was like, and I always asked her for shit. And then I remember it was a still smoking meeting, and I like asked her for her lighter like a zillion times, and I lost like a couple, like she had a few in her purse, you know. I had already lost one. It was like only like a half an hour through the meeting and like all this shit. And she's like, you know, you really need to look at your self-centeredness. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? I'm not doing anything. I'm not fucking somebody in the bathroom. I'm not like going and gossiping. I'm not doing any of that shit. I'm just losing your lighter. She's like, that's really self-centered. You know, I'm a working mom, with a kid, and I don't have a whole lot of money, and you're just like floundering my shit around. You're like, that's not cool, you know? And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that, you know, little things like that are affecting you, you know, and annoying you. And so I started working on that shit. You know, and I had to work on that for a long time. That was like the next 8 years of my recovery. And, you know, today it's really funny because like the last several years, I've really been looking at, once I got through, not completely through, I mean, I still look at how I'm being self-centered and every day, and how to be honest, how to be open, how to be willing throughout my life. Right now, it's less about like learning how to be a recovering addict, because I kind of feel like I'm kind of in that groove now. But right now, it's like how to still not act out on that fear. You know, how to still have faith that this program, no matter what the issue is, can give me is strong enough. You know, so I'm working the second step with the sponsee, and we're talking about not expectations. We're talking about reservations, and she was talking about how, you know, there's all those reservations about using, but then there's also reservations about using character defects, you know, and not using spiritual principles, and having those reservations. If this happens, I have to act out in this way. If this happens to my kid, I gotta be controlling. If this happens to my husband, I have to, you know, try to manipulate. If this happens to whatever, like, and it's all in my head, I think this is positive shit, you know, and that's why I keep coming back, because I don't understand my own bullshit. But those thinking that, once again, that losing that faith in this program and thinking I got to grab my will back, and these spiritual principles don't apply in this spot. I got to take the shit back and try it my way. And that doesn't work. I'll tell you that right now. And every time I do, my life becomes unmanageable, you know? And so it's really about, you know, today I'm acting in one of two ways. You know, I'm either acting out with faith in the program or having fear and having faith in my disease, you know? And it can be one or the other at any given time, you know? And I can see that in my life. And applying spiritual principles in my day today is, you know, when my husband's parents were dying and his brothers were being super shitty and trying to fix, manage, and control the situation, and hurting his parents who were in active dying mode with their decisions and not trying to control the hell out of the situation. You know, that was applying a spiritual principles. You know, when when I had what was I'm trying to think? Oh, yeah. So, and then when I was trying to let go of some shit with my brother a couple of years ago went completely insane and attacked my family, basically, because he's an addict, and there was no reason or rhyme or reason for it. And it just really tore me up. And he did not, so that happened on Christmas Day 2 years ago, and he hadn't talked to me for 2 years. And he hadn't tried to clean this up. And it was like completely insane. I was 8 months pregnant. He pushed me. He attacked my husband, for no reason at all. And just like the absolute rage and anger that I had on this guy. And so, I had an uncle die, and so I went back up to family for the funeral and everything, and then he came back to my dad's house and pretended like everything was fine, and here I am sitting at my dad's house. He's grieving over his uncle who was like a father to him. I'm here to support him. My brother, who attacked my family in front of my 3-year-old, pushed me over when I was 8 months pregnant. He's acting like everything's fucking okay while drinking his beer. And I was on vacation with my family in Chicago, and I needed that vacation. I left there to be there for my family, and I was just ready to lose my shit. I just wanted to attack him, how could you do this to me? I wanted to scream and shout, and it was a good thing I was on my 3rd step, because in the 3rd step It Works Out in why it talks about, let's see here. At some point in our lives, we may mourn a death of a loved one, or might end a relationship. When such things happen to us, we hurt, and no amount of spiritual awareness will take away our pain. I had so much fucking pain and anger that I could not explode, right? I won't go into all the horror details, but it was ugly, fucking ugly. And I was there shaking, and I ran out, I called my sponsor, freaking out on the phone. She's like, you need to talk to him, but not today. You don't have to do this today. And I was so angry. I would cry. I'm not a quiet crier. I cried all the way back to my dad's house. My sister took me to her apartment. I cried myself asleep. And I was crying not because I was sad. I was crying because I was so rageful. And I knew in my heart, I felt like I was doing the wrong thing. That the right thing was to go and put him in his place. And I was so mad at myself for not fucking doing that shit. I didn't see the sanity at all. And then I woke up crying again, and I had to go to the funeral, and I was still not okay with this shit. I was like, no way am I going to get through this without losing my shit. I left, and then after a couple of weeks, then I started feeling better, and I'm truly grateful for that. Again, no limits about what this program and the spiritual principles can do for me. I don't have to go there today, no matter what the situation is. When I had my miscarriage at 4 months, I was so upset. I wanted that baby so bad, and I didn't want to use dope, but I wanted to use everything else. When my child was 3 days old and was spitting up blood, and I didn't know what to do, and all I wanted to do was rage out on my mom because she was there, and I didn't, because I knew that, I was just dealing with all these emotions, because life happens, and shit, you start dealing with all these real feelings, instead of just crazy shit that I make up. I still don't have to act out, and I can still apply these principles in all my affairs. And that's really awesome. That's all I got.
Okay. Can we have Justin come up?
I'm Justin. I'm an addict. I could relate to a lot of what Gabby was saying when I first came to this program. I was introduced to Narcotics Anonymous when I was 19 years old. I could tell you back then, I didn't want to have anything to do with this way of life. I honestly, I wasn't ready yet. I viewed Narcotics Anonymous as a cult, but I heard a lot of things, and some of the things that I heard was the same addict will use again, and I heard everybody stress that this is a program of change, and, I thought I was fine, I thought everybody else was a problem, and so, I came around in and out for 5 years. The law would send me, rehab would send me, and each time I came, I was in more and more trouble and more pain, and, I still wasn't ready to grasp. I wasn't willing to surrender to everything everybody was talking about, and, eventually, I would realize I had a problem, and I would try to quit, one particular one particular drug and substitute and use one for another, and pretty much I would try doing that and it would never work. I always got the same results. I always did what I was doing and pretty much always got what I got, and just kept digging. My bottom kept getting deeper and deeper, and I don't know, eventually this time a few years ago I was at the lowest I had been, since I started using, and I decided somewhere along the way, I'm going to give Narcotics Anonymous a chance, For these 5 years I was coming in and out, I noticed, I recognized a lot of people each time I came, who would share and talk about, still being clean and stuff, and for the first time in my life, I remember when I surrendered, I remember when I was ready to give Narcotics Anonymous a fair chance. I had about 16 days clean, and this lady was celebrating 20 years that night, and I did something I had never done before. I spoke. I went to the meeting late, and I asked for a phone list, and I stuck around after the meeting for the first time because I was that guy, coming late, leaving early, and pretty much just getting my sheet signed to please the judge or rehab or whatever. And I decided something inspired me, and to this day I can't explain it, and I'm gonna give Narcotics Anonymous a fair chance for once. I'm gonna surrender and see what this step work and change is all about. I had enough pain, and I guess I was just glad I wasn't dead yet or facing a large prison sentence. On 23 days clean, I asked a man to sponsor me. That was hard for me to do. I pretty much felt more nervous than asking a girl out. And I don't know, from that moment on, it's been all about Narcotics Anonymous for the most part. When I celebrated 30 days clean, that was the first time since I picked up my first drug that I had got 30 days clean from absolutely everything. Because complete abstinence from all drugs was was not something that was in the plans for me. And it all started with those first 3 spiritual principles that you hear people talking about: honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. I can remember about a week before I got clean, I finally started becoming honest with, who I am and kind of accepting it. Don't take me wrong, I used for another week, but I can remember on my way to go get some drugs and on the phone with my mom the whole way there, I broke down and finally, was honest and was telling her what I was doing. I wasn't lying, manipulating, or, hiding what I was up to, and that's when I realized, I'd been using drugs against my will for a long time. And I surrendered to Narcotics Anonymous and hadn't looked back since. I asked this man to sponsor me and, became open-minded and willing to do what, he told me worked for him. I started going to as many meetings as I could and, showing up early, staying late, and getting to know some people around here. And, finally it clicked in my head that, the same addict will use again. From the very beginning, I have a sponsor who has told me how important it is to keep my side of the road clean. All my life I was a victim. Everybody else was at fault. When I got arrested, it was the cops' fault for searching me twice. When I got fired from jobs, it was my employer's fault. Just when all different kinds of shit happened to me, I never owned up. I never took responsibility for my actions, and I lived that way for a long time. Today I can accept responsibility and I can own my wrongs. Like I said, those first 3 spiritual principles laid the groundwork for me, and we started working the steps, and I started learning a little bit about humility, which I struggle with to this day. I've been able to accept that I am where I'm supposed to be in my process, and that it's progress, not perfection. I graduated college in this process so far, and that was one of my rationalizations for why I didn't have a problem, because for the most part I did well. And how could I be a drug addict if I'm getting semester honors and things like that? And I could remember one of the first honest things I did when I got clean was I had an opportunity to cheat on an exam, and I happened to, when I got clean, and the sponsor I have now, or who I've had since I've been clean, he, whenever an opportunity to do something fucked up would come along, and I would want to do it, and I started working this program and getting honest with myself and with everybody else, I would think, I can't fucking do that shit. I have a program, I remember being proud of myself for not cheating on that exam, because I would have, ran with that when I was using. I wouldn't have thought twice. Today doing things like that doesn't sit right with me. And, I was at this gas station where a friend worked, and they told me, I asked him if I could steal a pair of sunglasses, and I had probably 6-9 months clean, somewhere around there. And I was getting ready to do it because I really wanted these sunglasses, and I thought, I can't fucking do this shit. I'm trying to work an honest program. I'm trying to not be the same person that I was before I got here. And I was kind of upset with myself, but then I was proud. I was grateful that, I can do the right thing. And in gratitude, I've learned that to be an action rather than a feeling. I can tell you, lately I've been in somewhat of a funk, and I don't wake up with this overwhelming feeling of gratitude each morning, but my sponsor has taught me to take it as an action to show that I'm grateful, to show up for my family, to show up for my friends, and all the great people I've met in recovery, to be there for the newcomer, to just like what I said, be there for my family. That's the most important thing. They haven't disowned me along the way, and there's nothing I can ever do to repay that, besides for me to stay on this path. But at the end of the day, I'm here for myself too. I don't know. Sometimes today, the best I could do with applying spiritual principles is not acting out on a crazy ass emotion I have. I get it a lot with work. Sometimes, the best I could do that day is not just walking off on the job on an emotion. Today I can own up to my responsibilities and do what I have to do, and just be the best productive, responsible member of society I can. In this process, before I got here, I was never able to hold a job down. Since I've been here, I've been employed with the same place for a while now. It's kind of amazing. It's very amazing for me, at least. I wasn't the kind of addict who was able to hold a job down and, show up for work on time and do all the responsible stuff that people do. I just couldn't do it. My life was centered in using and all that good stuff that comes along with using. I don't know. I don't know, that's all I got, guys.
The floor is now open for after comments. Please be aware that you are being recorded, and also keep comments brief so that everyone may have a chance to share.
I'm Roxanne and I'm an addict. Anybody do that? Maybe when we were using. Today, would you call that sane or insane? And why is that? Because you know nothing about that person, yet you're going to leave him there and you're going to trust them that they're going to take care of your child? Well, guess what? How are you going to trust a higher power you know nothing about? People wonder why they have problems and struggle with a higher power and why I keep taking, I give it and I take it back and I give it and I take it back because you don't know nothing about it. You can pray and pray and pray, and I did a lot of that early on, foxhole prayer, get me out of this just one more time. Today I don't pray like that. I don't pray, I'm sick and I'm in pain. Make it go away. Every morning when I get up, I pray to my higher power and I say, give me what I need this day to get through it clean. Whatever it is. If I have to have pain today to get through it to stay clean, I'll take that pain gladly. But I know my higher power will give me the ability to get through the pain. That's my higher power's will for me today, and me walking that path, and it all ties down to serenity. My serenity is directly proportional to the amount of step work I do. If I stay in it and I'm working it and I'm applying spiritual principles and I'm living it outside of the program, my serenity is great. When I start slipping away, anything I put in front of my recovery, that's the first thing I'm going to lose. I'm not willing to lose any of that today. I don't want to lose my serenity. I don't want to lose my clean time. I don't want to lose the relationships of the people in recovery that I've met. And I don't want to lose my sponsor. And I don't want to lose any of my sponsees. I really, really am grateful for my predecessors. And I wish that some of those predecessors were still at the tables sharing what they know. Because we're this far away from losing that information. If you know someone out there that's been clean a long time, you haven't seen them around the tables, pick up the phone and give them a call and tell them, you know what? I was told that that's stealing. You come and you get clean and you learn how to do this stuff and then you leave. What about the newcomers behind you? They need you, just like the predecessors that you needed. My name's Roxanne, and I'm a grateful recovering addict. Thanks.
I'm Bobby, I'm an addict. I'm just so grateful to my higher power for you all being here when I got here, truly applying spiritual principles. I apply it to every point in my life. If it wasn't for this program, I wouldn't have made it. Spiritual principles to me, honesty, open-minded, and willingness has really gave me freedom in my life. The road that I was on was total destruction. But today I can say that I'm able to be in a healthy relationship with my husband. I'm able to operate in a job where I'm working with people, with judges, with lawyers, and different people in high places where I'm able to, where they come to me for information. And I know that this wouldn't have been possible. And I knew if they knew my background, they wouldn't even come in the room with me. Because they're like, we are not going to even have you here. Security, come get her. Because that's the life I used to live. But today I can say I work the steps, I have a sponsor, and I have freedom today. I'm happy. You know what I'm saying? I never was able to love. It's always manipulation, selfishness, just ridiculous thinking. I couldn't even make a sound thought. Every decision I made was destructive, not only to myself, but all that was around me. People from my past don't want anything to do with me because I was just about me, self-centered. But today I can say that, yes, I'm blessed to have finances, but I'm able to give back to others. I take this program and I give it back away every chance I get. I'm a servant today. Before it was all about me, but now it's not about me anymore. It's about what can I give to the next person? What can I do to help somebody along the way? I'm blessed because I'm able to give back. It's not about the fanciest car, about the biggest house, but it's about freedom today. Not being able to just today being clean to me. My serenity is just awesome to me. It's everything. Recovery is my life. Without it, I don't exist. I'm no good for myself. I'm no good for no one else. And I'm loving on me today. You know, the weight, whatever I have, you know, I love myself. I'm smiling all the time. They say you're the happiest person ever because of this program. You know, I don't have to tell them I'm an addict. Some anonymity. But they know that something that's happened on this pathway has really changed this young lady around. And she's able to help others along the way. On my job, sometimes my bosses, they like, you give too much to people. But when I see an addict, I go after them with everything I have. I let them know that I'm the scum of the earth. You know, nobody wanted to be around me either. I wasn't clean. I was selfish. All I wanted to do was hurt people. But today, look at me. You would never know. I would never believe you don't look like it, but what do an addict look like? You know what I'm saying? You wouldn't be able to look at me and tell where I come from. But if I share my story with you, you'll be like, wow, that's pretty deep. You know, so if he did it for me, I say he can do it for anybody. You know, and I have a God of my understanding. You know, the God of my understanding is just off the chain. He gives me what I need, you know, to be able to give back. Because when you give back, something goes out of you that transforms the minds of people. And that love just reaches beyond who you think you are. And then you learn how to accept self-acceptance, and then you're able to accept other people unconditionally. See, now I don't challenge people about what they will not do to help us, but I'll just, you know, surrender it. You know, we're powerless over people, places, and things. And so when we learn to accept and love on oneself, then we can love abroad. But until you learn how to accept it and apply honesty, or be open-minded, and be willing to change, this program will not be operating in your life. It will not, and we'll never be better than anybody else. I tell them, if you just look at your skeleton on your own skeletons, you wouldn't worry about mine. You know, let's just help each other. Why do we have to think that because you got 20 years and I only have 4, that I can't tell you something? I have something to share out because the program is working for me as it is for you. You know, and I don't look at myself as, oh, I got this or I got that. But if somebody's dirty or whatever they are, I'm going to hug them. I'm going to love on them because it's not about that. It's about what can you give back? Because it's without parallel. Addicts helping addicts is without parallel. And we have to learn how to get in that parallel moment. You know what I'm saying? What can I do to help somebody? What can I do to help myself? What can I do to get up out of this rut? You know what I'm saying? I can blame my mother. I can blame you. I can blame the neighbors, you know? But how is that going to help my process? It will not. But if I get up and say, hey, I can make it. When I get caught in a rut and a barrier, I say the serenity, God, grant me, you know, this day. And so those types of things that we need to do to be able to help somebody. The joy, the love, the freedom, the peace that this program gives you if you just allow it to flow. It's a process. You don't just get up and change overnight, but as I go along, just keep coming back and just don't pick up the first one. I didn't pick up the first one in 4 years, and tell me today I have a life. The freedom, and every time y'all share to me, I take these suggestions. I don't just listen, I listen to learn. And when I take it, when I get in a hot spot, I use what y'all have told me. And it's working for me. It's working for me. And then people look and they say, wow, you're off the chain. I say, I am nothing. But you know what? I have a program in my life that is really doing a thing and helping me to help others as well as myself. And I look at how I work the steps with my sponsor. We work on an individual level, and then we work as a group. But that individual, sometimes you have to share on an individual level. But I'm not afraid to get at the tables and give it up, because if I hold on to it, I'm going to mess myself up. You know what? I don't care what you say with me after this. You know what I'm saying? But I want freedom. I don't know. My life is at stake, and I live like this is it. Just for today, I got to fight to win this battle, because my enemy, that old drug demon, wants to tear me up. That sick thinking. Now that I don't want the drugs, now I have behaviors that I picked up outside of this. I'm like, what is this? Why am I buying so much junk? The house is cluttered, but I keep saying I don't have nothing. What is wrong with me? You know, and I keep telling myself I want to do better. So people say something's wrong with you. Now I'm saying, you know what? It is something wrong with me. Now how can you help me? You know. So we have to learn how to ask for help. We got to get out of that prideful thinking. You know, the same stuff that got me this chair is what I need to get away from. So I pattern myself around people that do not use drugs. I pattern myself around people that are positive, that will give me something from this program. I don't gather around people that's stepping on me and telling me what I'm not, and I'm just a dope addict, and I'm just this. I remove myself. I don't argue anymore. I said, you know what? I love you, and I go the other way. I'm not going to go to jail, you know, acting out and getting upset over what? It does not make sense. So I learned how to apply this program. These steps, I apply them. I study, I fight, I battle for my life, you know, because I was destroyed. I was out there, I couldn't stop, and I don't ever want to go that route again, because today I can go to school, I can learn now, I'm able to remember your name now. I couldn't do those things, simple things, just little small stuff. If you learn how to be grateful and thankful and learn how to flow in your freedom and your peace and your serenity, can't nobody do anything to stop you. And not only that, when they see you, the atmosphere around you, that glow and that thing that covers you, people want that. They say, I want to be around you. There's something about you that just feels like, wow, I just want to be in your presence. I just want to get what you got. And I say, hey, here's a program. It really works. It changed my life. It changed my husband's life and our children. You see, they see us, because you can say what you want out your mouth, but they want to see action figures. Mom, you're all messed up. And now they say, Mom, I want to be around you. I want to bring my friends around. I'm not embarrassed anymore. Because when people come, no matter who they are, Mom, you just adapt. I'll get over there with anybody like, yes, let's do this together. I love people today as I love myself. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lauren. I'm an addict. I'm grateful to be here, and one of the things that was coming up for me when I was listening to the marvelous speakers was, applying spiritual principles is something that I need to do, and something that I do and practice, practice spiritual principles. I practice, so some days it's better than others. But one thing that kind of stuck out, like when one of the speakers was sharing, was how, actually both, now that I think of it, was this thing where sometimes I apply them, whether it be to, not say something I really want to say or whatever it is, or whatever, not steal when I really need some money, or I really need, this or that, and that's what I'm used to doing. Is that I would think, because they tell me to do it, that I'm going to be like, yes, that was a great decision. But a lot of times I don't feel so good about it. Maybe because I'm looking for that instant gratification. I want the defect. I want the, I want the payback right now. I want the money, or I want to feel good. And sometimes I don't. I don't always feel good. This is not surprising, I guess, but I don't always feel good being honest, like if there's something I really need to share in a meeting, I'm not like, oh, this is wonderful. I'm glad I'm doing this. I'm usually like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I crying? And it's not something that I enjoy. But that's good for me to remember, because afterwards though, I'm like, oh, I'm glad I did that. I can see the whole thing through. But like with my will, it's this immediate thing, and I want it to go this way, got to go this way, but that's not how spiritual principles work, It's like the spiritual principle of shut the fuck up and listen to me, and I don't think that exists. But so doing everything else, I have to wait to see the results, patience. So I don't know, maybe I guess like what I heard today, and what I guess I'm just like seeing for me, is that maybe patience is something I need to work on, because that's my biggest thing. Well, I want the reward now. So, that's why I choose defects. But, I'm glad that I came, because, I'm on the 7th step, and really kind of like looking back on my 6th and seeing, okay, I'm still having this pain for the defects, and so now I'm like having to focus on what are these spiritual principles that I've been ignoring, because when I got clean, kind of like Gabby said, I wasn't paying attention to, spiritual principles. I mean, I just wanted to stop using. But they said, one thing that really stuck out to me in our readings was, in the How It Works, which is, that 3 of our spiritual principles, basically that if there's one thing that's going to defeat us in our recovery, one freaking thing, hey, guess what? It's not drugs. No, it's indifference or intolerance towards spiritual principles, you know, and I'm like, oh, I have that. I don't know what they are. I don't care, you know, but so I better get with that. And it's like, you know, 3 of them that we just cannot do without, indispensable, can't do without it. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. And I was like, shit, you know, because honesty, I didn't even know how to do that at all. And like one thing I found out about that, I just, you know, practice, like I said, small things. Started being honest about, oh, I got too much money back, you know, at the store, $1 freaking dollar. And I was like, oh my God, no, take it. You know, I'm too good at math for this, you know. And, you know, because I know that it's going to come out of another person's register. Yeah, it's only $1, but it's only $1. You know, I don't need to be upset or guilty about $1 freaking dollar. You know, I'd rather just give it to this person. And, but I don't know. So that was the first thing, but then I can look back and say, but I was still stealing, you know, in different situations, and I had to, oh yeah, that's stealing, like, and just learn, you know, to let some of that stuff go, you know, like one thing at a time. But, yep, the train has been derailed, but thanks, that's all.
My name's Chris. I'm an addict. Hi, Chris. Grateful to be clean today. You know, before I got to this program, I knew nothing about spiritual principles, absolutely nothing. Honesty, forget about it. Open-minded, forget about it. Willing, forget about it. The only thing I was willing to do was go to the dope guy, and that was it. I learned a few things in this program, though. You know, I stuck around. I was not willing to apply those principles in my life when I first got here, and I went back out and got high. This time around, I learned a lesson to apply these principles in all my affairs. It's what it tells me to do, and that's what I try to do on a daily basis. I had a real hard time with honesty when I got here. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us did, you know, but I have to be an honest person today, because if I'm not, I find myself slipping right back into my old patterns. You know, it's the feeling that I get. That's another thing too. You know, when I got to this program, I got this thing called a conscience. I feel bad when I wrong somebody today. I feel bad when I think maybe I could get away with telling a lie, but that feeling of guilt that you were talking about, it's not worth it. To me today, it's not worth those feelings, you know. Even if I know that I could get out of trouble by just letting that one little lie slip by, I know I can't do it because I have this guilt, and this conscience has told me that, you know, I feel bad today because of it. Before, man, there was no feeling. There was no feeling of nothing, man. I was completely numb to what was going on in my life. And I choose not to live like that today. I choose to apply these principles in all my affairs. You know, I'm not perfect by any means, you know, and I still make mistakes. You know, my old character defects can come out really quick if I'm not putting these principles in my affairs. You know, if the open-minded part of it, that's another thing, you know, one of those, if I'd have got here and thought it was going to be my way and that was it, I wouldn't be here today. There's no way. It was all about opening up my mind and trying new things and new ways to work through problems instead of just doping myself up and getting through the problems that way. I don't have to live like that anymore today, and it's all because of this program. There's so many things, even now in recovery, you know, I think that I know how to deal with situations. There's still times that if I'm not open-minded, then I'm not willing to take new information in, because I think sometimes, you know, I got a handle on it. I know how to deal with that problem. You know, and I've seen it before where I've heard people say stuff in a meeting and, 15, 20 years clean, and it doesn't register with me. And that's the crazy thing about this program. I can watch and listen to somebody in a meeting with 10 or 20 days clean say something, and it just opens my eyes to it. I mean, it's absolutely baffling how that happens. But that's what being open-minded does for me, I'm open-minded that maybe this way will work better, and a lot of times it does. If I get out of myself and I'm willing to try new things in my life, most of the time it works out better for me. The willingness. I said, the willingness to go to the dope house and do this and do that. I'm willing to try these new things today, I'm willing to go to any length to keep this program and keep what I got. My life, I'm blessed. I'm truly blessed today from where I came from, and I don't want to give that up for anything, I need to be willing to go to any lengths to keep what I got. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to any lengths that I have to do to keep what I got, and I'm going to continue to be willing in this program, because if I'm not continually willing to learn new things, I become complacent, my program stops, my growth stops, everything in my life stops. It just, I come to this one spot and I get stuck there. And it's a bad place to be, man, so I choose to work these principles and apply them in all my affairs today, because that's what I need to do. That's what they told me I need to do, and that's what I continue to try to do. So I'll pass.
Thank you, Chris.